Ladies and gentlemen, letting go is not the moment of weakness people often think it is. It is not the dramatic exit, the tear-filled goodbye, or the moment you finally walk away. Letting go is quieter than that. It's internal. It begins the moment you realize that holding on is hurting more than it's helping. Letting go is not about giving up. It's about choosing yourself maybe for the first time in a very long time. The day you stop chasing someone who refuses to meet you with honesty, empathy, or respect is not a day of defeat, it's a day of power. And not the kind of power that shouts or slams doors. It's the kind of power that comes from deep within. The kind that whispers no more. The kind that says, I'm done abandoning myself. You see, for a long time, you've likely been trying to make something work that was never meant to. You've been shrinking, editing yourself, bending over backward to keep the peace or earn love. And somewhere in that process, you started to believe that if you just tried a little harder, gave a little more, proved your worth one more time, maybe, just maybe, they would see you. Maybe they'd finally choose you. That narrative is exhausting, and it's based on a lie. The lie that your value is something someone else gets to determine. The truth is, the constant chasing, the explaining, the second chances, those aren't acts of love. They're acts of fear. Fear that if you stop trying, you'll be left with nothing. Fear that if you walk away, it means you failed. But what if walking away is the moment you actually succeed? Letting go is terrifying because it requires us to confront a brutal truth: we cannot change another person. We cannot love someone into treating us better. We cannot show up for someone so perfectly that they suddenly become safe, kind, or emotionally available. That's not how transformation works, and the longer we chase the hope that it might be, the more we lose ourselves. Courage, real courage, is saying, I love myself enough to stop trying to earn what should have been freely given. It's looking in the mirror and telling yourself the truth that staying in a cycle of emotional starvation is not noble. It's self-neglect. And you don't deserve to be starving for affection, for consistency, for truth. You deserve peace. You deserve safety. You deserve love that doesn't make you question whether you're enough. Letting go doesn't always mean you stop loving. It means you stop sacrificing your soul to keep something alive that's already dead. It means you begin the grieving process not just for the person, but for the illusion. The illusion that they would change. The illusion that if you were different, it would all be better. The illusion that love is supposed to hurt this much. Real love doesn't leave you broken. It doesn't confuse you. It doesn't manipulate your emotions or gaslight your reality. Real love makes you feel seen and safe. It grows you, not drains you. So when you finally stop chasing someone who made you doubt yourself at every turn, that's not loss, that's clarity. And clarity is the beginning of everything. When you stop chasing them, you start returning to yourself. You begin to hear your own voice again. And at first it might be shaky. It might sound like uncertainty or guilt or grief. That's okay. That's normal. Your nervous system is recalibrating. You are learning that safety doesn't come from external approval, it comes from internal alignment. Letting go is where self-trust begins. It's where you say, I don't know what's next, but I trust that I can handle it. That's the win, not the fairy tale ending, not the apology that never came, not the closure that was never offered. The win is when you finally close the door yourself, not out of anger, but out of reverence for your own heart. We're not taught that. We're taught to persevere, to prove ourselves, to fix what's broken. But no one tells us that some things aren't meant to be fixed, they're meant to be left behind. Because saving yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred, and you don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing peace. There will be days when you second-guess yourself, when the silence feels too loud, when the absence of chaos feels foreign. Don't mistake that discomfort for wrongness. That's just your system detoxing from emotional adrenaline. Peace can feel boring at first, but don't go back to the fire just because you forgot what calm feels like. The truth is, it's not your job to teach someone how to love you. It's your job to love yourself so clearly that anyone who can't meet you there simply fades out. You don't need to beg, you don't need to chase. The day you stop is the day you win, not because you got over it, but because you finally got honest. Letting go is the ultimate act of courage because it says, I am no longer afraid to be without you. It says, I trust myself enough to walk away. And most importantly, it says, I am done performing. I am done pleasing. I am done pretending that this is enough. You may walk away shaking. You may cry. You may wonder if you're doing the right thing, but deep down you'll know. Because the moment you stop chasing what hurts you is the moment you start healing. And that, more than anything, is the moment you win. Chasing someone who repeatedly disregards your feelings, invalidates your reality, and manipulates your sense of self is not a love story. It's a trauma response. And when we don't understand that, we write the wrong narrative. We tell ourselves that we're being loyal, that we're holding space, that we're fighting for love. But what we're really doing quietly, painfully, is fighting to be chosen by someone who was never supposed to hold that kind of power over us in the first place. You see, love, real love, doesn't need to be chased. It doesn't hide. It doesn't dangle approval in front of you like a reward for good behavior. It doesn't keep you anxious, guessing, or walking on eggshells. Love doesn't condition its presence on your ability to contort yourself into someone else's expectations. That's not love. That's fear. And when we keep returning to people who emotionally starve us, who give just enough to keep us hoping we're not experiencing intimacy, we're re-experiencing old wounds. That's what makes it so hard to stop. Because chasing feels familiar, especially to those of us who learned early on that love had to be earned. That affection was something given in doses. That safety was unstable and inconsistent. If you grew up in an environment where your emotional needs weren't reliably met, where your worth was tied to performance or perfection or silence, then unpredictability might feel like home. And when you meet someone who mirrors that pattern, your nervous system doesn't label it as danger, it labels it as love. That's the hook. That's the trap. You're not just chasing this person in the present. You're chasing the unmet needs of your past. The longing isn't just for them. It's for resolution. For someone to finally choose you in all the ways you weren't chosen before. And so you work harder. You try to be more understanding, more patient, more forgiving. But the finish line keeps moving. And no matter how much you give, it's never quite enough to make the relationship feel safe or solid. This is not about blame. This is about compassion for yourself. Because once you start to understand that your chasing is rooted in survival, not weakness, you can stop shaming yourself for it. You weren't foolish. You were trying to heal. You were trying to make sense of something senseless. You were trying to turn chaos into connection. And you were doing it the only way your body and mind knew how, by running after what felt familiar, even when it hurt. It takes time to unwind those patterns. It takes time to stop confusing inconsistency with passion or distance with depth. And it takes even more time to realize that the person you're chasing isn't capable of giving you what you're looking for, not because you're unlovable, but because they're emotionally unavailable. Their inconsistency isn't a test. It's a red flag. Their hot and cold behavior isn't a mystery to solve. It's a message they cannot show up in a healthy way, no matter how worthy you are of it. But when you're stuck in the loop, you can't see that. You're too busy trying to decode their behavior to find the magic words that will finally unlock their love. You think if you just explain yourself better, stay a little longer, love a little harder, they'll finally understand. That keeps you trapped in a never-ending cycle of hope and hurt, of highs that feel like euphoria and lows that feel like abandonment. And each time they withdraw and you chase, the pattern deepens. Eventually, though, something shifts. You get tired. Not just tired of them, but tired of betraying yourself, tired of silencing your needs, tired of excusing their behavior, tired of calling pain patience. That's when the real work begins. When you start to pull back and examine the pattern instead of just playing it out, you begin to realize that love shouldn't feel like emotional whiplash, that connection shouldn't come at the cost of your peace, that you deserve to feel safe, seen, and supported, not constantly triggered. And that's where healing begins, not in their change, but in your choice. The choice to stop chasing. The choice to stay with the discomfort of disconnection instead of rushing to fix it. The choice to sit with your own feelings instead of outsourcing your worth to someone who withholds affection. It's not easy. Every instinct will tell you to run back, to reach out, to make it okay. But healing means breaking that cycle. It means calming the urge to perform for love, and instead learning how to receive it without earning it. Eventually, you realize that what you were chasing all along wasn't them, it was a feeling. The feeling of being enough, of being wanted, of being chosen. And here's the truth, you don't need someone else to give you that feeling. You can give it to yourself. You can reparent the part of you that learned to confuse effort with love. You can soothe the nervous system that equated anxiety with connection. You can build a new template, one rooted in safety, not scarcity. That's the freedom that comes when you stop chasing. Not because you stopped caring, but because you started healing. Because you finally understood that true love doesn't need to be pursued with desperation, it arrives with peace. And when it does, it won't feel like a chase. It'll feel like coming home. Boundaries are not walls. They are not acts of aggression or punishment. They are not cold-hearted or selfish. Boundaries are the clearest, most loving declaration of self-worth you can ever make. They say, I know who I am, I know what I need, and I am willing to protect my peace, even if it costs me your approval. And that is strength. For so long, many of us have been taught that love means self-sacrifice, that being kind means being endlessly available, that being a good person means tolerating whatever is thrown our way. We're told to turn the other cheek, to be the bigger person, to forgive endlessly and love unconditionally. But here's the truth, love without boundaries is not love, it's martyrdom. And kindness that costs you your self-respect is not kindness, it's self-abandonment. You don't set boundaries to push people away. You set them to stay connected to yourself. Without boundaries, you become a version of yourself that's constantly managing everyone else's needs while burying your own. You smile when you want to cry. You say yes when your whole body is screaming no. You stay quiet to keep the peace, not realizing you're creating a war inside yourself. And over time, that disconnection from your own needs becomes a breeding ground for resentment, burnout, and shame. Because every time you override your inner truth to accommodate someone else, you teach yourself that your needs don't matter, that your limits are negotiable, that your worth is conditional. And that is a lie. Your worth is not measured by how much discomfort you can tolerate. It is not measured by how many times you forgive someone who refuses to change. Your worth is intrinsic. And boundaries are how you honor that truth. The moment you start to set boundaries, things begin to shift, sometimes slowly, sometimes with force. People may push back. They may accuse you of changing. They may call you difficult, selfish, dramatic. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because they were benefiting from your lack of boundaries. When you stop over-giving, over-explaining, or over-functioning, it disrupts the system. And that disruption is necessary. Growth often looks like discomfort before it looks like peace. But the discomfort is worth it, because boundaries are not about control, they are about clarity. They let others know what you are and are not available for. They create space for healthy connection, not performative loyalty. They say, I love you and I also love me. They allow you to show up in relationships from a place of authenticity, not obligation. And let's be honest, setting boundaries is hard, especially if you've spent your life tying your value to being needed, especially if your early relationships taught you that love was conditional, especially if you've been praised for your selflessness, your ability to always be there, your capacity to endure. But at some point you have to ask, who is being there for me? Who is enduring for me? When you set a boundary, you are not just protecting your time, your energy, or your emotional safety. You are rewriting a narrative that may have told you for years that your job was to absorb other people's chaos, to fix what you didn't break, to tolerate what hurt you. That narrative is a lie, and boundaries are how you tell the truth. You can love people and still say no. You can have compassion and still hold limits. You can care deeply and still walk away from relationships that consistently dishonor you. That doesn't make you cruel. That makes you conscious. Conscious of your value, conscious of what you need in order to thrive, conscious of the kind of life you want to live and the kind of love you want to give and receive. Boundaries don't keep love out, they keep dysfunction out. They don't mean you're not open, they mean you're discerning. And discernment is a gift. It allows you to choose who has access to your energy, your heart, your time. Because not everyone deserves access to all of you. Not everyone has the capacity to hold you with care. And it's not your job to shrink or suffer to make them comfortable. When you begin to honor your boundaries, you'll notice something else, peace. Not the loud, dramatic kind of peace we chase in highs and validation, but the quiet, steady kind. The peace of knowing you're not betraying yourself to keep a relationship afloat. The peace of choosing honesty over harmony. The peace of being rooted in your worth rather than reaching for it in someone else's hands. You don't need to explain your boundaries endlessly. You don't need to justify them to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to beg for respect. A boundary doesn't require a battle, it requires consistency. It requires you to follow through. And yes, that's hard, especially when guilt creeps in, especially when you're tempted to make exceptions. But remember, every time you honor your boundary, you strengthen your self-trust. You teach yourself that you can be counted on, that your well-being matters, that you are worthy of relationships that nourish you, not deplete you. Boundaries are not just about who you keep out there, about how you invite in people, experiences, and energy that are aligned with your truth. So the next time you feel like you're being too much for asking for what you need, or too sensitive for feeling hurt, remember this: your feelings are data, not drama. Your needs are not inconveniences, they're indicators. And your boundaries are not barriers, they're bridges. Bridges to more honest, more aligned, and more loving connections. You are not hard to love. You are just learning to love yourself in a way that no longer allows others to mistreat you. And that kind of love, that's the beginning of everything.